Coming up on Chopper's Political Podcast.
This review of local government is going to be the biggest national scandal we've seen in a decade.
Welcome back to Chopper's Political Podcast, where I bring you the best guest gossip, news and stories from our studios at GB News here in the heart of Westminster. We're 1 month away from the anniversary of Sir Keir Starmer arriving in 10 Downing Street on the back of an election landslide. But it might be an anniversary the PM may want to forget. It's been a year when Keir Starmer has managed to get on the wrong side of a lot of different groups in our country. Pensioners, farmers, benefit claimants, many on the left, employers, the list goes on. People are asking, what is this Labour government for? And more worryingly for the PM, what is Keir Starmer for? Also this week I'll be talking to one of the prime movers behind Reform UK's plan to leave Elon Musk-style DOGE units into councils that they control to tackle what they say is woke spending. That's Arron Banks. More of him later. But first, to the PM's future. Incredibly, I do mean incredibly, there's been talk of the PM not fighting the general election, and I didn't help but start this. It was a question I asked the PM when I interviewed him a few weeks ago in Albania. Here's what he said. What's your plans for your future? Will you fight the next election? You want to commit to that now?
Chris, you're getting way ahead of me. I'm absolutely clear.
Talk about it.
Yeah, I'm absolutely clear that my task is to rebuild our country, give us the security that we need. We're getting on with that. And what you've seen over the last few days, trade deals with India, with the US, hopefully a better trading relationship with the EU, very strong growth figures today. Reflecting, I think, the decisions that we've made. 4 interest rate cuts, national living wage has gone up, waiting list have come down. There's a long way to go yet.
So that answer was surprising on that trip. Why didn't the PM just say yes, as any normal politician does? And even if his mind changes, he said yes and it's changed later on. That's okay too. The PM did clarify a few hours later to journalists on that trip to Albania that he does intend to fight the next general election and lead Labour into that election, of course. But there has been persistent talk about who might replace him. If not Keir Starmer, who? Well, with me right now are 2 journalists who have been reared on studying the intricacies of Labour politics and have covered their fair share of Labour leadership elections. John Rentoul from The Independent and George Eaton from The New Statesman. George Eaton, to you first. Why are we here? Why are we considering the future of a guy who won this massive landslide barely a year ago?
That's a good question. I think the answer lies in how quickly Labour's poll ratings and his own personal ratings have fallen. They lost the Runcorn by-election to Reform. There are a lot of new Labour MPs, but they're also nervous. They're looking over their shoulder. They have Reform in second place. And I think partly because Keir Starmer's project was all about winning. You know, it was really turning around Labour from its worst defeat since 1935. But I think when you have a project that is very much grounded on going towards the country, then when you're unpopular in the country, people are naturally going to look around and ask, might we need someone else? And you've got clearly members of the cabinet. Angela Rayner is setting out an alternative vision with her memo to Rachel Reeves. And as I've written, Andy Burnham at the Compass conference last weekend.
We'll come to that later, but yeah, exactly. Is the problem here, John Rentoul, that he wasn't meant to be Prime Minister in the first place? He wasn't meant to be PM because it was meant to be West Streeting, wasn't it? Basically, Boris Johnson was meant to win the second term. He then serves it, and then Keir Starmer halves his majority, or whatever it might be, from 80 or so to 40, and then Streeting steps in. Starmer's back in his legal chambers about now, and we'll carry on.
Well, that was the thinking among some of the people who were behind Keir Starmer's victory. Was that they wanted West Streeting as leader. They wanted a Blairite. But West Streeting wasn't ready, and Keir Starmer was a ready-made candidate who already had a backstory which was about being tough on crime, and so Morgan McSweeney decided that this was what he was going to go with.
Well, he ran for leader back in 2019.
Yeah, 2020. Yeah, and obviously, had no thoughts of actually winning a general election, the next general election. Because Labour were right down and we're recovering from the Corbyn years. They hadn't even ended at that point. So winning the general election was not in the plan.
With such a majority. I was actually his first podcast interview on Choppers Politics, the old podcast I ran. In fact, I was also Jeremy Corbyn's last one. He had interviewed him the day before he stood down. Bizarrely, I had this kind of abutting these two Labour leaders. He seems it weighed down by office, doesn't he, George Eaton? I mean, there's a lot going on in his private life. He's got people firebombing his homes. That's alarming for anyone. I mean, is it? And he also, I think he feels to me, when I've been with him a lot in my job, St Helens just last week, he wants people to understand why he's doing something, but people don't understand why he's doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say on him personally, I think he is resilient. I mean, I think those who know him well would say that you cannot have survived those tough years in opposition. He considered resigning in 2021 after the Hartlepool by-election.
Troy's one.
He seems actually quite at home on the world stage. He clearly enjoys that, and I think that's because it is more straightforward than domestic politics. And I think Keir Starmer's government has had a change from the start, which is that even Westminster watchers haven't always been clear what the narrative is. Mm-hmm. So the public certainly haven't been clear. And we're coming up to 1 year in. What is the government's defining action? It's cuts to winter fuel, which they never really explained clearly the justification for it, and are now U-turning on. So you can forgive
the U-turning. We'll see with that.
You can forgive the voters if they're confused.
Yeah, I mean, John Rentoul. I mean, how easy is it to get rid of a Labour leader? I think it's. This is remember when there's a challenge against Jeremy Corbyn, wasn't there, back in 2018?
Owen Smith.
Yes,
2016. I mean, this is the problem. I mean, I think a lot of journalists might think, oh well, get rid of a leader the same way as the Tories do it, but there's a big difference, which is that a challenger has to accumulate nominations. 20% of MPs, that's a fifth of MPs, have to publicly come out and say they're nominating somebody else. That's a much stiffer test than
like 70 or so. My quick calculation, 70 or so.
I think 70 or 70, 80 or
70.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to get rid of a Labour.
And what happens then? So they sign letters, do they, or they do a nomination page?
They just have to nominate
someone else.
They have to nominate a candidate. A single candidate, or maybe somebody else would start trying to collect nominations as well. But I mean, then you'd need 40% in order to get two candidates. It's much more difficult than the Conservative system, and very unlikely to happen, I think, if Keir Starmer doesn't want to go.
Yes, and he says he wants it's a 10-year programme, he eventually said to us in Albania. And he said, I think, when he first became leader, it's a 10-year programme, so he's implying...
10-year programme of national... He remembered the right answer about half an hour after I interviewed him.
I know, I felt bad about that. There we are, that's news for you. But I mean, it is... Can you imagine it, George Eaton? Can you imagine him quitting? I mean, age, he's 65 at the next election. He'll be 70 at the next election after that.
Yeah, his age doesn't come up much, I find, in Labour circles. His poll ratings do, though. So, look, I think it is imaginable, because we do live in this sort of accelerated world where people say political leaders have become a bit like football managers. Change more often than they used to.
In the Tory party, then. Yeah.
But look, I agree with John. The rules do make it harder in Labour, as long as Keir Starmer, and I think it's particularly hard to remove a Labour Prime Minister. So he would have to go for the. He would have to
went for entirely, didn't he?
Yeah. It would have to be a sort of probably a voluntary act. But look, he did consider resigning after the Hartlepool by-election. Yeah. If they have
considered resign.
Yeah.
If all of the elections go as badly as the first set did, then he will be in a very difficult position. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Here's the problem he's got, John Rentoul. He's got quite a left-wing membership base who want action on benefits, lifting the benefits gap, for example, maybe other ways on aid. But he's got him more. You mentioned Morgan McSweeney. These strategists know they've got that's not necessarily that popular amongst most people.
No, I mean, and he Keir Starmer is explicit that he sees Nigel Farage as his main opponent at the next election, and therefore, he's not going to go to the left to appease party members.
Farage is arguing for lifting the benefit cap.
Well, yes, which complicates things, but I mean, ignore that for the moment for simplicity. But I mean, the big question is how left wing the parliamentary party is. I mean, the Labour MPs. I mean, because an awful lot of those were selected by Morgan McSweeney in effect in order to be loyal to the party.
Yes. Are MPs behind the scenes saying it's time he went to you, George or John?
No, no. I think
No,
I
I'm
think
sorry.
they're thinking ahead to the next election, and most are assuming it will be a contest between after the next election between Wes Streeting and Angela Rayner.
So you think-
Wes Streeting as the leading Blairite candidate, Angela Rayner as a more classically sort of Labourist.
So they think in the next Parliament, after 2029, at some point in that Parliament, he'll signal he's going, because he can't really fight the election.
Something
again.
that could happen before. Even cabinet ministers privately speculate as to whether he'll fight the next election.
Even now.
Yeah, but you're talking about a voluntary.
Yes, yeah.
Well,
Just-
not voluntary.
Not a
rather
push,
than-
not a joust. No.
Yes, exactly.
And you're hearing the same thing.
Yes, although it's rather difficult to pin people down on this kind of thing. I mean, George is too modest to quote himself, but I mean, he had a very good line in his column the other day that there may not be a vacancy, but there's always a contest.
Oh, yes.
Which
Just politics.
Yeah, which is politics. I mean, Angela Rayner has made no secret of the fact that she thinks she could do a better job than Keir Starmer. All along. I mean, since the start, since they.
She just said that we leader, didn't she? She didn't want to be leader, didn't she?
Keir Starmer saying to you, "Yes, I'm going to fight the next election." I mean, nobody's going to turn around if he doesn't fight.
or I pledge.
Oh, but you promised.
Yeah, or Keir Starmer's protestations of loyalty to Jeremy Corbyn and so on. I mean, that's a very political answer.
Exactly, and Lorena is a very political.
What, just saying I'm not going to be leader is a political answer. I'm obviously missing a trick.
What Keir Starmer should have said to you, which is, of course, I'm going to fight the next election.
Yeah.
And the answer is always, no, I don't want to be a leader.
If she had,
I'm not working constantly to undermine the leader we've got.
I mean, had she equivocated, it would have been, Rayner challenges Starmer. Rayner refuses to back Starmer. So she did. She
just said it.
Yeah.
So let's look at the Mount Rushmore of people that might stand at this. I'm thinking of the faces. Wes Streeting, you mentioned him there, George Eden. He's obviously the Blairite candidate, is he? If that word exists anymore.
Yeah, I mean, look, certainly he comes from that political tradition. It's someone who is more sympathetic to the private sector and business than some Labour MPs, some of his cabinet colleagues.
NHS.
Yeah, but the challenge he has is that he's less popular among the membership than Angela Rayner or say Bridget Phillipson, who is another who some see as potential candidates. Certainly less popular than Andy Burnham, who is very popular among the membership. Rather less popular among Keir Starmer's. And the rules mean the members have the final say at the moment. It's assuming that all of those candidates would clear the hurdle. So he'd have to reposition himself.
And less secure in his seat, and that matters too.
Yes,
because
no, that does matter.
take out is a big deal.
Although it's interesting, and I think John's made this point that if Reform won the next election, Angela Rayner would probably lose her seat on some of the swings that are projected.
So that's telling you that Angela Rayner, of course, is making it that leaked the Telegraph. I mean, that was a whole kind of different shadow budget, wasn't it? Really,
absolutely, and it had two elements though. One was tax rises for the rich, fairly small, modest tax rises. So
quite complicated too, weren't they?
Yeah, and quite
pension change,
sort of thing that could easily be quite popular, even with Tories. And the other part was spending cuts for immigrants, for benefits for immigrants, and that is sort of that pitches her right across the centre ground. I mean, she's very good at positioning herself. I mean, she's made an alliance with Tony Blair. She was at Tony Blair's Christmas reception. I saw her there at Christmas. They had an onstage conversation. He sort of has blessed her as a possible future leader, I think. Because, I mean, George is absolutely right. Wes Streeting is just far too... I mean, Wes Streeting would obviously... I'm a Blairite. Wes Streeting would obviously be the best candidate. Clearly. I mean, he's got the right political analysis and he's a superb communicator. And, of course, the Labour members hate him.
And Rachel Reeves, of course, now her fortunes appear to go up and down with the bond markets, don't they?
Well, I think, unfortunately for Rachel Reeves, you'd have to say our fortunes have very much only gone down since the election. I mean, she did. We know that she and Streeting had a sort of very brief exchange about the possible leadership contest when Keir Starmer was being investigated over so-called Beergate and whether he broke COVID rules. There's no doubt that she was positioning herself as a potential success.
Angela Rayner was also on the...
Yes, exactly. And often when she was after Keir Starmer the most powerful person in the cabinet. But look, her fortunes amongst both voters and Labour members have really plummeted because of how unpopular measures such as the winter fuel cuts have been. And I think she has struggled to articulate a clear narrative as chancellor. Is she the tough iron chancellor taking difficult decisions that will pay off in the long run? Is she reversing austerity and spending more? Is she going after the wealthy? Actually, look, she's done a bit of all of those, which I think is why, as well as being unpopular, people are increasingly sort of confused about what defines her.
Yeah, and we had that 12-week gap while the OBR checked her books when she came in. I was there in Rolls-Royce when she announced at the beginning of the election campaign, the OBR will get a veto on the budget. So that meant a 12-week gap before the budget, which then meant September, October, November. That meant all this uncertainty. She hasn't
recovered from that.
No, her authority. I mean, when I've been thinking back to Gordon Brown, when he's just made the Bank of England independent on day 5 of that government, that really ground the faces of the Tories into the dust, didn't it? Frankly, and that hadn't happened.
Yes, absolutely, and he established himself very, very early on as a formidable force in there.
And now she's got pledges not to increase taxes, and we expect taxes will increase to go up in the autumn.
She will have to increase taxes. The only question is by how much. I mean, for now, they're sticking to this tax block on income tax, VAT, NI for employees. But you've got Donald Trump again saying, I want all NATO members to raise defence spending to 5% of GDP. And look, they banked this,
which is more than the US.
Yeah. But they had 1 quarter of strong economic growth, 0.7%, which they've banked. But they're talking as if that will continue. I mean, that's by no means guaranteed. I mean, economists are pretty gloomy about the state of the UK. So
okay, so we mentioned West Streeting, Angela Rayner and Rachel Reeves. The prince over the water isn't David Miliband. We're going to discount him, although some might think he's still got a chance. John's still
possibly too late for that.
Holding a candle for David Miliband. But Andy Burnham, he's the person who George Eaton wrote up the speech he gave last Saturday. That set the hairs running in Westminster. Just briefly, I'll go to George first. How did that piece appear? Did Andy give you a tip and say, "Come on, flop down to the come and hear me speak"?
He didn't know. I mean, I think I joined the dots. I mean, it's look, a lot of people groan and go, isn't Andy Burnham running a sort of permanent leadership campaign? No, there's some truth in this. I just thought this went further than normal in terms of, he said, look, it's a popular left programme. He was talking about speaking to the public. He was not just criticising decisions the Labour government have taken or saying I'd like more money for Manchester. He was saying I want welfare cuts reversed. We need to introduce proportional representation. I want free transport for all teenagers in England. I want to abolish the party whipping system. Wow. I mean, I compared him to Tony Benn, because Tony Benn, in the sort of another former cabinet minister who sort of moved left with age, had this alternative economic strategy. And it was the closest we've seen from any senior Labour figure since the election to saying, look, here's what I'd do if I'm Prime Minister. He didn't say that. He didn't say, he didn't need to, though. Neil Lawson, who's the head of Compass, has some influence in sort of left-wing politics, said at the start of the conference that Andy Burnham is by far and away the most popular person to be the next Labour leader. Andy Burnham sort of was speaking warmly of Neil Lawson in his remarks. It was at the Ministry of Sounds. Yeah, he didn't get on the. He didn't get on the decks. But look, I think he very much enjoyed how warmly he was received by the crowd, and didn't mention Keir Starmer by name once in his speech. Rachel Reeves, he knows what he's doing,
and he knows perfectly well that there have been 2 surveys of Labour Party members since the general election. And one of them asked about him, and 91% of Labour Party members have a favourable view of Andy Burnham. He's easily the most popular
John Rentoul,
politician.
We've all bought the Burnham Kool-Aid back in 2010.
Well, I shot it when he was a Blairite minister. It's only Blair's.
I mean, he's impressive. I mean, I think for me as a Liverpool fan, Hillsborough was a moment that really gripped Hillsborough, made that investigation happen, delivered the justice for the families. But aside from that, I mean, he was impressive, and then he stands and all falls apart, didn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, he stood twice for the leadership, and failed to get it both times.
So what?
And on both occasions, his problem was that it wasn't clear what he believed in, and where he really stood, and what his real sort of irreducible core was to you, the Blairite.
He flip-flopped around from memory.
And to get rid of Keir Starmer because nobody knows what he believes in, and to get in Andy Burnham, who nobody knows what he believes in, I don't think would be progress for the left.
Just finally on Andy Burnham, what's his route in? He's not an MP.
The old rumour used to be that Graham Stringer, who's an MP in the North, would stand down for him. Some also speculate over whether he could take Andrew Gwyn's seat. So look, but it's not easy, and
especially if there has to be a by-election.
Yeah, I mean,
in a formish area.
And I don't think Keir Starmer's team might be looking to hasten anyone's move back to Parliament. But look, he is advertising himself clearly as an alternative leader.
So what happens next? Keir Starmer carries on. I mean, we've gone through all the options here. I mean,
well, you Sadiq Khan. You've got
Sadiq Khan. Sorry, forget it. Sadiq Khan, the fifth member. Okay.
I don't think. I mean, he positions himself a bit.
Sir Sadiq to you, of course,
but he's not as popular as the others.
Probably quite popular among the Labour membership, sort of on the.
But it's not as popular as
Rayner
or Burnham.
Yeah.
This podcast is all about easy questions. So yes or no, will Keir Starmer fight the next election? George Eaton.
Yes, I think he will. I mean, I think George is absolutely right. He's incredibly resilient. He's shown the ruthlessness of his ambition, and I just don't see.
But the talk won't go away. I mean, because he will be against a Tory leader probably 20 years younger than him. Either Kevin Badenoch or Robert Jenrick or someone else.
Well, he'd be fighting Nigel Farage.
He did the same age
at the next election. But I mean, but there will be that question will grow as to who's going to be next leader. Because I mean, you're quite right. I mean, after the next election, he'll be 70 at the election.
He'll be asked in interviews, one GB News probably of the election, how much of the next term will you serve? And he can't say 5 years.
Well, he could.
He could say.
Well, the right answer is always, I'm going to serve a full term, isn't it? Do you remember Tony Blair used to say that?
The leadership campaign, George Eaton, has started already. All these others.
There's always there's always a campaign. But no, Keir Starmer could go. I'll go on and on. I don't think we're that place.
Very finally, of those five we've mentioned, Wes Streeting, Angela Rayner, Rachel Reeves, Andy Burnham. Let's add in Sir Sadiq Khan. Which one is the leader in 2034 for the Labour Party?
I think Angela Rayner has the best chance of the moment.
Okay, John.
I agree with that. I think
right.
Yeah, I think she's the really serious politician among that lot, and she has a lot of support among party members. She's very popular, and she's the one to beat.
Okay, Angela Rayner for leader. You heard it here first. George Eaton from the New Statesman, John Milton Toole for the Independent. Thank you both for joining us on Chopper's Political Podcast. Great to have you. Thank you. Now, Reform UK have their hands on the levers of power for 4 weeks in 10 councils across England, and they're just starting to make that power felt. One of the key ways is sending in teams of experts and accountants and tech wizards to root out what the party said is wasteful spending on woke policies, as they try to demonstrate to voters that they wanted to deliver public money and spend money on things that matter to them. And with me now is one of those DOGE leaders, the chief DOGE, you might think, the former bad boy of Brexit, Arron Banks. Arron, welcome to Chopper's Political Podcast. I mean,
it's on a chief Doge. I don't know if
chief Doge. Where's your chainsaw? Do you get a gold chainsaw? You're not a councillor, but you did fight and did quite a successful run, didn't you, to be the West of England mayor?
Yeah, well, actually, that made me interested in local government away, because I delved into the inner recesses of the budget for West of England mayor, and I didn't like what I found.
Yeah, and you stood on a policy, I think, of just saying, I don't want to be your mayor. Cool, I'll be your mayor, but I won't do the job.
Well, like I said, it was a pointless job. It was really polished on it, but I did all right nonetheless.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, and
And the Liberal Democrats within 2,000 votes in Bath, which I think shocked them to their core.
Were you second or third? Forgive me.
I was second.
Yeah,
only 2% behind Labour. But when you consider that Bristol hasn't voted anything other than Labour since 1935, it maybe shows you the sign of the times.
The rising tide is
rising tide. The little lot of yachts.
Arron Banks, what is the UK version of DOGE? In America, it means Department of Government Efficiency. You want a department, you're 4 or 5 people cutting.
No, I think it's more of a concept. I mean, Reform are taking control of 7 councils, and I think they're in coalition with 2 others.
I think there's 10 or so. I think
largest party. So, but what I found interesting about the visit down to Kent County Council was how institutionalised it is. I mean, we just discussion with the CEO, who obviously clearly probably wasn't that pleased to be greeting us and to listen to what we had to say.
You think, what is it? What is it?
Make prediction though before we get on to it. I mean, you remember that years ago the Telegraph ran an expose of expenses of MPs.
I was part of that.
Oh wait, I didn't know that. But in any event, it was a hugely successful campaign. that all sorts of things came out of the woodwork. And I think this review of local government is going to be the biggest national scandal we've seen in a decade. I mean that sincerely. Fraud, corruption, waste, and almost the capture by some of the big accounting firms. The system has been set up to enrich large corporate entities at the expense of the taxpayer. So I think we'll be the first party ever to take it on. And it certainly won't be easy because the vested interests in there are colossal.
As big as the expenses scandal, I mean, that was huge. That forced out a third of MPs. Some MPs went to prison. The Speaker of the Commons resigned, and I was part of that.
I'm going to say right now, it will be a bigger scandal than that. I mean, we're already seeing examples, which I can't give you the rock solid examples now that make that kind of petty.
Well, this is Paul's there. You're not just describing Kent by saying this, are you?
I think virtually every council, county council or large local government organisation.
What are typical examples of what you're finding, without perhaps naming names, if you don't want to do that yet?
There's numerous examples of this kind of, purchasing. We saw it, did we not, with the PPE scandal with the government, that contracts were awarded to people that shouldn't really have got them. Vast sums of money were misappropriated.
And it goes to the heart, possibly, that when it's public money, it's not their money. I mean, I wouldn't spend $3,000 on a computer when I get one of £800 in Amazon. Why aren't
we emphasise that with reforming Kent, that you've been elected to spend the money as though it was your money. If you were going in a taxi to the airport, you would, the first quote you got was £150 or £200, you wouldn't just pay it, would you? You find a more efficient, cheaper way of going about it.
And perhaps the way you make that happen is you give the person spending the money an incentive to get the best deal. So currently, they don't care because it's not my money, right?
Well, also there's a belief, Chris, that bigger is better. So, during the West of England campaign, I observed that, the bus contracts have been given to gigantic multinational companies in the belief that they would somehow magically reduce the cost of the contract. But in reality, they're taking a huge profit margin out of it and very often producing a terrible service where if you gave it to a local bus company or gave it to 10 people and made them compete, competition is good and it produces good outcomes.
You sound cross.
I was pretty cross, actually, after that meeting.
You're not normally emotional. I've known you for a decade.
It kind of got quite heated. It is. In the sense of, I pitched up at Maidstone at 1 a.m. in the morning, having played cricket.
1 a.m.?
Well, I played cricket in South Gloucestershire, and so I arrived very late at Maidstone, checked in, and then started to read the council's 5-year annual plan, which would any Soviet authority would have been massively pleased with their output. I mean, it was pages and pages of alphabet soup, gobbledygook that made no sense to anybody, and clearly being compiled by someone that's never run a business or done anything.
Is the risk, though? I mean, obviously, in a studio, you can say these things, but these are people's jobs you're talking about. So will Kent or any of your 9 other councils be willing to lay off staff to get better value?
Might employ more people, because actually one of the things I think has been a disaster has been outsourcing contracts to people. And actually, a lot of the services that take highways were done better internally. They may not have been the raciest people in the world, but they actually cared about what they did and they got on and did it. Whereas you outsource potholes to some massive faceless company. Can you believe there are contracts for pothole companies that are 25 years long? 25 years long. Gosh. I mean, in business, I've never signed a contract over 5 years.
No. So, but year 17, I mean, everyone's dead. Who signed it? Guys negotiated it too.
I haven't got a clue. And
that's a lifetime.
I mean, actually, and you're talking about vast sums of money with no actual kind of KPIs or,
key performance indicators to...
or,
judge success.
Judge success. So, but it was clear that the council officials felt they were running a brilliant authority that was market leading.
Why do you think the Tories or Labour haven't done this? Why does it take Reform UK with this mandate to say, no, let's get the best value? for voters?
I think it's not a political issue in a funny sort of way. I mean, you're virtually the same age as me, Chris. We're losing our hair and getting a bit sort of, grouchy in the morning. But yeah, but jowly, exactly. But if you go back sort of 30 years, your local council was run with a town clerk and a group of worthy people that actually cared about what they were doing. Somehow this has got lost in translation into consultants and, but one of the issues which I found really interesting was when we spoke to them, they said, well, we can't possibly comply with every bit of legislation that's come out of Westminster. It's a physical impossibility. So I said, well, how do you deal with that? He said, well, each year we issue an annual apology for all the things that we're meant to have done that we didn't do.
Actual apology to the public that we didn't comply with this rule or that rule. I mean, it was like an episode of Yes Minister. And in fact, I got home from Maidstone, and I actually thought, you know what, I'm gonna watch Yes Minister on the BBC iPod, and I watched the first episode, and I mean, I don't know who wrote that, but he got it absolutely spot on. It was perfect.
It is brilliant. Here's
Brilliantly written. You can understand exactly.
issue the annual apology.
The annual apology.
That is a classic.
Annual apology to the voters of Kent.
We featured on GB News people some guy who.
So I'm getting a bit excited about this because I so it's shocked,
I was joining you in the interest of it. We on GB News we featured a guy who cleans road signs. He just can't stand them being covered in. So he gets everyone beeps their horn and cheers him. But if you did divert even some of this money to grass verges, just making the place look better, you'll get a lot of support.
Well, there was a secret pothole filler that got into terrible trouble, didn't he? He was so angry, he'd go at night time and fill in potholes, and then the council trying to get the police to find him because he was breaking the law by filling the pot.
Well, others have drawn sort of fallacies around them to point to source of cancel action because there's obscenity rather than.
Right, I've forgotten what your question was. Just repeat it.
No, but I think my point is that people with experience on GB News, people want their areas to get better. They want to see it improve.
Yeah.
They feel embarrassed about it. And then we see this escalating council tax bills and wonder where the money's going.
I can tell you, the potholes. So you actually get penalised by national government if you do a good job and you have better quality roads. You get less funding. So they give the funding to the council authorities with the worst.
So there's no rewards for getting better.
No, it's the opposite. You get rewarded for being bad.
Is this a culture war?
By the way, there's no ring fence of the money that the government sends, so the council can go off and spend it on something else.
Why not?
So if you get, just dreadfully boring for your listeners, but take potholes as an example. The most efficient way to deal with it is to send teams of people out and close a strip of road for a day, fill it in, do it properly. But very often the actual repair that the council's doing only lasts a year. So, for instance, there's equipment out there, notably JCB, that will guarantee the pothole for 10 years because it does it properly. And I think the short-termism is crazy.
Is there a culture wars element to this? The DEI is under fire from Nigel Farage in a speech he gave just Tuesday last week. He talked about DEI and savings made there. Are you going to be, we know flags won't be flown from town halls anymore, although county council flags, but not other flags.
Even the CEO of Kent County Council reluctantly admitted that there's been mission creep over what a council does. And in my view, what a council does should provide good services for the local people, but it should be limited in its remit. Whereas they've got into politics with the pride stuff, with DI, all the rest of it. What it needs is for it to go back to a laser-like focus on actually improving services for local people and cut out the rest of the rubbish.
So will your DOGE unit then produce almost a box, a list of things which we think every council should do, and outside that area is non-core?
To be right about DOGE, what it's attempting to do is to go through every transaction, just like Elon Musk did in the council, and say, what is this for, effectively. Now, of course, they're going to try and block this with their life because, they don't really want people to be looking at the actual expenditure line by line.
And you'll publish this information in.
Well, I think within the within the bounds of, the confidentiality of the information. But I think shine the spotlight. I said to someone in the Kent thing, even by saying you're going to do these things, will massively improve the way council workers go about stuff, and the fact they're being looked at.
And back in the day, Wandsworth Council was, of course, in London. It was raised up as a low council tax, and bins were collected regularly, and it was mysteriously how it happened. I think Windsor also back in the day was like that too. We'll wait and see if you can make it work. Just while I've got you, you were part of the Brexit campaign 2016. Yeah. And what's your thoughts on Brexit right now? Are you happy with the deal struck by Keir Starmer?
I mean, I think we never really got proper Brexit. I mean, the Conservative Party sold off Northern Ireland to the European Union disgracefully.
They would say giving it access to two markets.
Well, they can say what they like, can't they?
But you're saying yes.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a border
Northern Ireland is part of the United Kingdom. They're, as British as we are, and they shouldn't be treated differently. But I think in general, it was always an uphill battle. I mean, George Galloway, who I remain friendly with, even though you might not think I should be, he did say something very interesting to me. He said that Brexit will poison the political well for a generation. First, it will destroy the Conservative Party, and then it will come for Labour. And I think he's been proven to be spot on the money with that.
Well, the deal has been gone down quite well, hasn't it? I mean, no one's rowing about it now. There weren't any obvious victims. A fisherman got 300 million in a 12-year deal. Yes, they've lost access to waters to the French.
I just object to us always going cap in hand to Europe, not showing a strong kind of position or something.
And you're back in the game after, you've had a break in the game. Back from politics. Not back on the game, in the game. Well, back in the game of, it's a bit of a game, politics sometimes. I mean, the serious work is your business life, but you enjoy politics. You're back doing it after a pause.
Well, I seem to be doing more of it.
And you're loving it. There's a glint in your eye, Arron Banks, if you can't see on your YouTube screen. I mean,
yeah. I quite enjoyed the West of England mayor.
Yes. So what's next then? They stand in the Welsh elections next year. You're going to run those?
No, I don't think so. The Welsh elections are for the Welsh, I think.
Okay.
I can't see myself in.
By-elections coming up?
Well, curiously enough, the mayor of the West of England mayor, as you know, was also the MP for North Somerset.
So yes, of course.
And obviously with his current predicament,
yes,
we expect
under investigation.
I think he's been arrested. But anyway, regardless, I expect there to be a by-election there in the next sort of 6 to 12 months. I suppose it's Jacob Rees-Mogg's old seat. So
he may want this seat. He may want to fight for reform.
Well, I would say if he sees the light,
yes.
Then
if not, we'll take him on.
I'd take him on, win.
You'll take him on a win.
I mean, because that seat formed part of the West of England mayor, I won it by quite a comfortable margin. So I would have high hopes.
It's the battle of the Brexiteers in North Somerset.
Absolutely.
The battle of the stately homes.
Well, my house is quite a stately house.
It's pretty.
No, it was his for that.
That's pretty big.
My son actually said to me the other day, "What's the definition of a stately home?" And I said, "Well, I don't know."
Has the state near it?
Probably something that's been awarded to you for your services to the state.
And you're off on Nigel Farage. I mean, he's on the up, isn't he? I mean, a year ago, he'd just come back into politics.
Yeah.
He won 5 MPs from a standing start. Yeah. Now you got 220,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
Subscribers. Well, members, whatever you call them. Are they members? Not sure what their legal position is, but they are supporting it. I mean, it does seem... It's startling, isn't it?
Well, it's phenomenal.
Happening in the country.
But I think it reflects the total disillusionment with Labour and Conservative Party.
Yeah.
And I think it's, if they think it's just a flash of the pan going away, I think they're sadly mistaken.
And will he be Prime Minister in 2029?
I think he could be.
What are the odds? The odds are given that.
Oh, I'm not, I am a gambling man. I was literally about to say I'm not a gambling man, but I actually am a gambling man. So
Evens, 50-50?
I'd say 2-1 at the moment, but getting better.
2-1 on to be Prime Minister.
2-1
against or
I'd say getting better by the moment. I would say.
So is a 6% likely to be Prime Minister?
I think so. Gosh, yeah.
Arron Banks, it's been great to see you. Thank you for telling us all about DOGE. It's fascinating.
Yeah,
we'll get you back.
I honestly think you're going to hear a lot more about this as we start to uncover some pretty serious mispractice. You're going to hear a lot about this.
And the police will be called in.
Well, if there's criminality, of course.
Yeah. Councillors arrested. or officials will get arrested.
I mean,
Whatever.
yeah, whatever
big
the
deal.
consequences of it are, really.
Arron Banks, thank you for joining us again.
Chris, it's a pleasure.
And thank you earlier to my two earlier guests, George Eaton and John Rentoul. I tweet at Christopher Hope on X. What's your Twitter handle, Arron Banks?
Crikey, I don't know.
It's something.
Do we know?
I don't know.
Arron Banks.
Arron Banks.
Something.
He's always out there. Email me, chopper@gbnews.uk. If you enjoyed this show, please do tell your pals. If you really enjoyed it, leave a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. That helps other people to find it. Thanks to the great team of colleagues at GB News behind the podcast, Mick Booker and Jeff Marsh back at Basecamp, and the podcast's busy worker bees, the drones as I call them, Rebecca News and George McMillan, watching us from behind the camera. And most importantly of all, thank you again for listening. If you want more Chopper in your life, Arron Banks does. Who doesn't? Catch you during the week on GB News with my updates of politics and what's happening in the world of Westminster. And keep up to date with our best political reporting on our website, gbnews.com. But until then, from me and Arron Banks, cheerio!